Are we live? We're here, we're good. How's it going, everybody? I think I've got one viewer right now, which is amazing. Thank you. So tonight we're going to be going over 2 light portraits, basically just using 2 lights to create a really nice professional business portrait. I've got Quaid here. He's going to be my model. He's super awesome, also a filmmaker from my hometown. There you can see him. You can see him on the live feed here. There we go. Say hi. What's up? Yeah, this is my first time streaming with this setup, so if there's any technical issues, let me know. If something sounds wrong, looks wrong, freezes up, or whatever, shoot it in the chat. If you have questions, also let me know. We're going to go through a few different categories of stuff, and hopefully it goes smoothly. But I've done some testing, so hopefully it's good, but we'll have to see. Yeah, so I guess with that said, let's just go ahead and get started. So, let me go ahead and check these off. All right. So the first thing that I want to go over real quick is the actual camera settings. Let me go ahead and switch to this scene so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So for the camera itself, positionally, what you're looking for is about eye level to your subject, maybe slightly above, if anything. And so what you're looking for is just that kind of natural look that's a little kind of downward towards their face, but not too high up, but just slightly, if anything. Straight on is okay too, but when you start to go like too low, typically it starts to look a little more, I guess, creative, which for this purpose isn't exactly what I'm going for, but you could get crazy with it if you wanted to, but for a business portrait, it's kind of not the ideal situation. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take a snap real quick. Thank you. And I don't have the strobes on right now, it's just the room light. We'll worry about light later. And then I want to show you kind of the different camera settings. So right now I'm running about 85 millimeters, which is a really good focal length for portraits because it's not like your face is like distorted with a wide angle, and it just looks more natural that way. So it's 85 millimeters on a full frame lens. I won't go over all the technical details of that right now, but that's kind of the gist of it. So you can kind of just see the framing that I have, and it also depends like on your distance from the subject and everything, but in this situation with this framing, you're looking at about 85 mil is very common for portraits. And then with the depth of field, you're going to want to have your aperture set to about f8. When you first start, it's really common for people to just crank it wide open and kind of leave it at that. And that can make some really cool artistic things. But when it comes to business portrait, you kind of want everything to be sharp. You want both eyes to be sharp as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it down to f8. Now you know it's going to get darker, but we're not going to worry about that because we'll have the strobes turned on here in a bit. Shutter speed for me is going to be 1/250th of a second. And that's because at this focal length for movement, it helps reduce motion blur, keeps everything nice and sharp without any like weird shake. And if you're holding handheld, I'd recommend nothing below 1/200th of a second, or keep it higher than that and make sure you have sufficient light. So that's kind of where we're at. Now, if I turn my ISO down, which I want to do to keep the noise down, it's going to go completely black because those settings are too dark for this room, which is good because we actually want to cut out the ambient light so you can see us on video, but this light isn't affecting the subject. So that's kind of the thinking behind that. So if anyone has any questions, let me know. Thank you, Roger. Hey, thanks for checking in, brother. Good to see you here. Sounds great, except I'm a little nervous for some reason, even though I've practiced like 3 times. Yeah, Roger, he's an amazing like art director and creative guy up in Boston. He does a lot of advertising work. He's a great dude. Yeah, thank you, Roger. Cool. So if you have any questions, let me know. We're going to move on to the background. I feel like I'm kind of blasting through this a little too quick, but we'll just keep moving. So the background elements, the biggest thing you want to do with a background is separation. So separate your subject from the background, not necessarily just with distance, but also with luminance, with color, anything to contrast it so that your subject stands out. I personally am extremely minimalist in this regard, so usually what I'll show you tonight is we're going to go pure black, But what a lot of folks will do is pure white, or they'll be in a natural environment and kind of adjust the aperture as needed to get, the depth of field they need to, make the background less distracting. There's a lot of things, but for me, it's just simple to put up a black background. So that's what I'm gonna do. And then separation with distance is important too, especially when you have a busy background, because it's gonna basically take all the distractive nature of it and kind of blur it all together. So that's kind of like that shallow depth of field effect, but that's not what we're going for. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the background up so you can see. I'm going to put it on the strobe real quick. It's not in the correct position because we're going to talk about position in a second. And if I turn on the trigger, you'll see everything's going to brighten up real quick. Here we go. So if you can just give a good pose here. Perfect. And let me switch over to this view so you can see what's going on. Okay, so that's what we have. Don't worry about the hardness of the light. It's not going to look very good because there's no modifiers or anything. But what I'm trying to show is a before and after. So with this, the depth of field, let me hop into viewer. So if I zoom in here, you can see that it's pretty distracting in the background. There's still some depth, but because I'm open or closed down to F8, it's not super creamy, but I don't necessarily want to lose the depth of field. So instead I would either have to push the background farther away to make it even more or less distracting, or change the layout of the background so there's not so many visual tangents. That's another thing. Twitch setup. Nice, Kevin, that's awesome. Yeah, for sure. So this will work for video as well. You just adapt the strobe use to the video. We're gonna talk about some good tips for that too. So because my studio is so tiny, it's really hard to get more depth without opening up the aperture, which I could, but then, you know, I'm compromising in some way or another, and I'd rather compromise on simplifying my background. So what I'm gonna do is just swing that in, and something that a lot of folks, especially new creatives, and it took me years to learn this too, is a concept called value or luminance. And there's a few different approaches to this when it comes to portraits. For me personally, I really like to see the subject as the brightest element in my scene most of the time, so I really like to go for the dark portrait backgrounds. You can see in the live view that it's helping Quaid stand off the background instead of like blend into it. And then you'll also commonly see pure white, which works as well, but it requires a bit more technical lighting solutions, a lot more fill to get that brightness. It's harder to do in a studio like this for me, so I just go for black. But also I like that it makes the skin tones pop off the background and that sort of thing. I'm gonna go ahead and take another shot so you guys can see. And let me zoom out here. There we go. So it's not perfect, but the background is pitch black, and that's because it's far enough away that the light isn't creating a reflection, but it's also made of velvet, and velvet is a material that absorbs light really, really well. I just bought this velvet sheet for like 20 bucks on Amazon. It's really cheap. The problem with it is that it does let light through. There's light leak because it's really thin, but I mean, in a controlled studio environment, I've actually got it kind of doubled over itself. It's not going to be a problem. So really cheap solution, which is really cool. Yeah, I mean, that's it. The background's really simple. At some point, it'd be really cool to do a stream where we're doing more environmental portraits. I'd have to find a location. That's just logistically very difficult. Maybe I'll just do a YouTube video on it. But that fixes the background, and that's a really easy solution because it's velvet. If it was a more reflective material, we'd have to be careful about the inverse square law and stuff, which I'll touch on here in a little bit. So, got that covered. Any questions? You guys are just sitting back learning. Thank you so much for joining. It's really cool to have all three of you here. That's awesome. Roger, I would love that someday. If I'm ever out there or you're ever near here, let's do a shoot for sure. I would love that. All right, so now we're gonna get to the fun stuff. We've got the camera locked in position about eye level to the subject. We've got the background in place. It's about 3 or 4 feet behind the subject. And we've got no light in here aside from this one strobe shooting down from like a butterfly light position, which I'll show you. So if I could have you, Quaid, look directly to camera, kind of turn your shoulders this way. I got a 45, a little bit more. Yeah, there you go. Just look right at the camera. Sweet. So there we go. So this is called butterfly lighting, or a variant of it. It might be a little bit tall, so I could drop it down just a smidge. But it's this strobe here that's firing. So why it's called butterfly lighting is because we've got a little shadow under the nose that resembles a butterfly, quote unquote. That's what it's called. I can't tell you exactly where that name came from other than someone creative just noticed that. But this isn't the lighting technique I want to show you, but I wanted to start here because it's a very common one that you'll find, especially useful for the ladies or for people that you want to contour the face more and kind of look more flattering. Now I'm shooting with a hard light right now so that I can show you the shadows extremely clearly, like where they're falling on the face, which is really important to kind of get the angles right, especially when you're practicing. But you'll notice the catch light, and the catch light is the reflection in the eyeball or in the iris. The catch light is kind of centered right above the eye, which is also a very fashion look. So this is a common portrait style, a common lighting style that a lot of folks use in fashion or for ladies, especially with a big, softbox, which we'll get into here in a bit. So that's the butterfly light. But what I want to show you is kind of, it's what's called Rembrandt, or Rembrandt is a artist, a Dutch artist who is known for a very particular style of light. So that's what we're going to do, and it works for pretty much any situation. So you're just going to choose which side you want the key light to be on. Oh, by the way, I don't know if I described it. This is a key light. Key means like it's the primary light in a scene, or the one that you notice first. So it's like the primary source. And so what I'm going to do, let me just turn on here we go. Can you see that? You might not be able to see it right now, but I can see that it's casting a shadow on his face, and I'm going to get it into position. Are you looking right down the barrel, or is it kind of pointed down, up? Where's that for you? Right down there. Okay, perfect. So it's about an arm's length away-ish from the subject, and we'll get into distance in a bit. But just for the angle, same pose. So you can see here what's happening is the nose is casting a shadow across the cheek, and there's this triangle of light that's being created on the left cheek here, or our left, his right cheek. So that triangle is what Rembrandt is known for. Now if I were to pull the light forward just a couple inches, and by forward I mean towards camera, and I took another shot, so you'll see now that the light doesn't actually cast a shadow across the entire face. So this is what you would call loop lighting. Let me have you look straight at camera. There we go. So what's happening is that shadow's not completely across. It's creating a loop back into the chin. So that's called loop lighting. It's a good look. It's very common. A lot of people do it. But I personally like a little bit more in the shadow. So I'm going to push it back where it was to get that Rembrandt look. So let's go ahead and do another shot here. And that is a little too far. So you can see I've gone too far because now we're losing the catch light in the eyes, and this triangle is getting really tiny. So I'm going to bring it back just a little more and test that out. It's a little bit better, still a little far back. That's pretty much it. And now again, I'm using a hard light right now so that it looks really defined. The shadow is really clear to see what's happening. It might be a little bit high because I'm not getting the catch light in the eyes, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it down just a smidge. And we'll see. So go ahead and same pose right to the camera there. Sweet. There we go. So that's looking a little bit more what I was anticipating. So we've got that corner of light there, and then we've got a nice natural shadow pattern that follows like what you would see in nature, kind of, or from a window. That's what Rembrandt was known for. So this right now is definitely not the final look, but it is showing you positionally where the key light should be in this particular style. So that is what we're talking about there. So now No questions in the chat? Cool. All right. We got 4 viewers now. Hello everybody. Welcome, welcome. If there's any troubles, sound issues or stream issues or freezing, let me know, please. Cool beans. So now we're going to talk about light modifiers. So let me switch to camera view. Here we go. All right. So as you can tell right now, this light, the source itself is about 3 inches in radius, so it's pretty dang tiny. So relative to the subject, it's dinky way out here. To make a light softer, there's a couple of ways you can go about it. One would be to bring the source closer so that relative to the subject, it gets bigger, or you create a modifier that's bigger. So I'm going to start with a small softbox. This is a 2-foot softbox. It could be a 2-foot window for all that matters. So let me go ahead and slide this on here. Now, technically, when I do this, the distance from the subject is going to get closer because now the source is kind of here. Even though technically the light's here, it's diffusing and bouncing around in here. And we can talk about the physics of softboxes at some other time. But because it's closer, I'm going to try to fake it and put it back where it would be at the previous photo, if I can. It's about all the room I've got. And I want it pointing directly at the subject there. I'm also going to raise the power of the light a little bit because you're going to get some light loss from the softbox. And go ahead and take another shot, same pose. There we go. All right, it's a little bit dark. Let me power that up just a little more. Yeah? Just wait. He said he kind of likes it like that. Okay, so let me do one more pose, same thing. Yeah. All right, cool. There we go. So now what you're looking at, look for the quality of the shadow. Basically, we've got a softer source, so it actually hides a lot of the texture of the skin, which is nice because it conceals some flaws, but we're also getting a softer shadow. The actual luminosity is a little bit darker because I still need to power the light up a little higher, but you can tell the difference from here with that hard shadow with the relative size of a light that's bigger relative to the subject, it gets softer. Let me go ahead and increase the power a little more just to match it. Let's see if that works. Same pose. Okay, cool. So let me pull it forward just a smidge because I think we're losing some shadow with the wider softbox. Same pose. Awesome, there we go. So now the luminance is going to be about the same what we had before with the hard light. Still maybe a touch dark, but the shadows are now softer. So relatively to the subject, the light source has gotten bigger. So I can really make this look more extreme if I get the light source really close. So it's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to get so close that Quaid gets uncomfortable here.
Good luck making that happen.
Yeah. And I'm going to get it so it's just outside of the frame of the photo. And I'm going to point it up a little more. And that should be pretty close. So I've got to drop the exposure now. Maybe a full stop, I don't know. And I'm going to go ahead and do that shot again. Yeah, that's pretty close. Okay, so what you'll notice is that if you compare the shadows from this shot to this shot, it's actually even softer. Let me have you look straight at the camera. Perfectly dead on. There you go. There we go. Perfect. So now we can see that this shadow light. Yeah, exactly. So you've got the shadow coming across the nose here and on the lip, and then it's creating a softer look because now we're even closer. So relative to the subject, this is putting a lot more light in all of the nooks and crannies because the light's coming from this side and this side. And I don't know if you guys can see this very well. Let me go ahead and switch back here. Sorry, I wasn't showing you the examples. So this was what we had when it was farther away. It's a little bit harder, a little more texture, and this is closer. And we'll have to talk about inverse square here in a bit but we can go ahead and get it even closer just for an extreme example. And it's going to be in frame, but that's okay. Turn on the power here. Same exact pose, dead on to camera. There we go. Cool. So now it's even softer. So if you look at this side of the nose, the shadow's almost dissolved. Not completely, but almost. Let me see what Roger has to say. I got a question. How much do you prefer to affect with lighting versus digital manipulation, like percentage-wise? Ooh, good question. I like to probably get 90 to 95% in camera, Roger. And then, you know, just maybe neutralization of the color temperature. I'm thinking of doing a live stream maybe next week about retouching this image. But yeah, I like to try to get everything in camera if I can, but it depends on, you know, the creative, like what's the final, you know, result that's necessary. Is it more feasible to do it in Photoshop or to do it in camera? It depends on the complexity. A lot of times though, I really prefer to get in camera because it eliminates compositing errors, and you know better than me, but yeah. Lighting in post, manipulating that way, mostly just exposure bumps here and there. So where were we at? Oh yeah, so you can tell that the shadow like almost completely dissolved on the side of his nose here versus this. Actually, let me get this a little farther away. It's a lot denser. Even here, you can tell it's still soft-ish, but the shadow density is higher. And that's a subject for a different day. Shadow density is different than shadow softness, and contrast is different than shadow softness. But just for the sake of this, so it doesn't go forever, we're going to just keep it to shadow softness. But it's disappearing. But the problem now, if you didn't notice, is that the light on the side of the face, on this side, is super, super bright on the right side, and on the left is super, super dark. And that's due to the inverse square law. So with inverse square, it's hard for me to describe scientifically, so I'm probably not going to do a very good job, but practically, when you're closer to a light source, the closer you get, the brighter it gets. Let me see if I can demonstrate this here. Let's just turn this off so that Quaid goes black. I'm just going to bring up the exposure just for fun. Crank the ISO here. Okay, so when a light source of the same power gets closer to a subject, it's going to get brighter. Farther away, it's going to get dimmer. But the next step to the inverse square law is that the light falls off dramatically faster the closer you get to a subject. So if I were to expose Quaid's face to this, by the time the light reaches the other side of his face, it goes completely black. So to make it more even across his face, you have to bring the light farther away and increase the exposure on the camera, if that makes sense. So now the light falling off from here to here isn't as great as falling off from here to here. So it's more evenly lit. So in this case, this light's too close. Unless that's the style you're going for, which is cool. But by the time it gets to the other side of the face, it's lost completely. Let's see what Roger has to say. All right, I would love to see you do a series on taking great pics with your iPhone. Seen some cool tricks on TikTok. Totally, absolutely. iPhone photos. I mean, it's all the same thing, right? Like if I took once we get the setup completely done, if I took a picture with my phone, it'd be really good. It really would. You just wouldn't get the tonal range and stuff like that, but really, it's not a big deal. Yeah, okay, so let's move on. So hopefully you understand inverse square, but basically what it means is, this is too close. The softness is good, but it's too close. So if I had to bring it farther away, we'd lose the softness. So what would I have to do? I would have to get a bigger modifier. So that's what we're going to do now. So let me pull it back to where I think it should be. And actually, I'm going to have to change the position of this entirely. But this softbox is going to go. And we're going to move to my umbrella. Now this umbrella is a bit overkill for this space. It's designed more for like corporate headshots at bigger locations, but it'll at least show the illustration. So this is a parabolic umbrella. All you need to know right now is that it's a bigger light source. So that's the diffusion. Don't worry about that yet. This is the umbrella. So I think it's like a 4-foot umbrella. It's massive. But if I open it up, it's like straight up Mary Poppins up in here. But
Mary Poppins is quite that large.
no, I don't think her umbrella was this big. So I'm gonna put this in the umbrella holder, and this might get a little tricky to put together. I'm gonna have to lower it real quick and see what I can do to get the diffusion on. And there are upsides and downsides to umbrellas. The upside is they're really light and really portable and very versatile, especially because this is a parabolic umbrella. What I can do, I'll just show you real quick, is I can slide it. I don't know if you can see too well. Let me switch to this view. I can slide it. Oh, is my audio still on? I kind of stepped on my cable. Looks like it. Okay, good. So I can pull it closer to the light and it makes the hot spot brighter, or I can push it farther away and it spreads it out and makes it bigger. But we're putting diffusion on anyway, so it's not going to be a massive game changer. Yeah, and umbrellas are really light, so like on location they're really handy. They're just a little finicky sometimes, especially with the diffusion. So let's hope I can put this on without completely embarrassing myself. If I do, then we'll just work through it. Yeah, we'll just work through it. We'll just work through it together. I was practicing this the other day and I thought I had a good system, but then I tried it a second time and it didn't work as well as it did the first time. So who knows? Who knows how it'll go? I'm sure someone who's done this a lot longer than I have will have a really great technique for putting on umbrella diffusion. But I have not taken the time to practice. Is it even going on? Could you grab that one side and feed it around? Thank you. Ah, shoot. There we go. I should probably loop it around. I have to spin it your way. Spin the whole thing like this, and then go ahead and pull that. Perfect. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
That wasn't too bad.
You probably would have done there.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, shoot. Did miss the side. Okay. There we go. Now we're good. That was fun. Okay. So I'm going to put this back in position. Now this is overkill, like I said, for this space, but it'll illustrate what I'm talking about. So because it's a bigger surface area, I can push it farther away from the subject, and relative to the subject, this is actually bigger still. I'd have to be quite a bit farther away for it to not be. Because it's got diffusion to go through and it's bouncing more, I've got to turn up the power a bit. I'll try a stop of power more for now. Turn the trigger back on. All right, same exact pose. Let's do this again. Switch back to this view so you can see what's up. All right, now that is way brighter. Oh, I keep stepping on my cable. Oh, right, because the parabolic umbrella. Cool. So let's try one more time. Straight the camera here. Get it in focus. There we go. That's better. Still a little too bright, but you're noticing there's almost zero shadow. So let me turn the light down again. Maybe another stop. Or maybe 5/10. Right at the camera again. Oh, I know what's wrong. I adjusted my settings on the camera for that illustration, so I need to set them back. The ISO's cranked way too high. There we go. Now it's going to be way too dark. Well, let's just try and see. Yep, way too dark. Put it back to where it was. Okay, cool. I'm a professional. One more. That's it. That's a lot better. All right, so if we compare, this shot was with the other light modifier, the smaller softbox, a lot closer. You can see how hot it is on the left side of the face, how quickly it falls off to the right side, his right side. And then if we go to this one, you'll see it's a lot more evenly distributed. So the light isn't as blaringly bright on the right side, but it doesn't fall off as hard to the left. And the farther the light gets away, the less that would be noticed. We check the stats. 7 views, 3 concurrent viewers. That's awesome. Thank you guys. So we've covered inverse square, hardness, softness. Any questions about this key light? Because we've got the key light pretty much in position. We're going to move on to fill. So I'll give you guys a couple seconds and make sure that the stream is looking good. I think so. How are you feeling? Need some water?
No.
You're all right? Okay, cool. Hopefully it won't be too much longer. I'm getting hot. I'm sweating. All right, so let's move on. So we've covered the light position or camera position, the background, the actual like lighting angle and the size and inverse square. Just really, I'm just barely touching the surface. One, because I'm not great at teaching in depth. Like I have a good understanding, but it's difficult to relay. So I'm just trying to keep it basic for now until I continue to learn how to teach. And we covered, yeah, the key light and got that set up inverse square, hard versus soft and all that. So now we're going to go into the bounce or the fill. So fill is a term that means any light source that fills in the shadows on the opposite side of the face from the key light. That's just like for this situation, how I would describe it. It could be another light, or it could be a bounce card, technically, whatever fills it in. Tonight we're going to use bounce because I'm going to reserve the second light for the background light, which we'll discuss later. So let me show you what I've got for bounce here. Hopefully you can see okay. Switch here. Okay. So this is a fill card. This is basically just foam core. I got it from Hobby Lobby for like $1. It's super cheap. Maybe it's $2 now with inflation. Who knows?
I can't get in.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little more expensive, but still very cheap. I used to have like a legit like flex fill bounce thing, but you know, there's really no point in a lot of professional studios, high-end commercial studios, big folks that I watch who've done massive brand, you know, deals. They're just using foam core on a lot of stuff. But the cool thing is on the other side, I've just kind of cobbled together this silver card, which is almost like a mirror. It's not a perfect mirror, but I can show you a couple of differences here with it. So with the mirror, the trick is you're able to actually see the image forming reflection of this light, which tells you it's exactly pointing at your subject, which is really cool. So if I could keep clamps on, that'd be cool. I'm going to clip it into my little stand here. And I'm going to raise it up as best I can. So I'm going to be relying on Quaid to tell me when it's reflecting the light source on the left, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on the modeling lamp so you can see it. I can actually brighten that a bit. Okay. So,
In the corner there.
yeah, it's going to be a little tricky. Let me get here because you're not going to be able to see very well once I get this up. What's happening is I'm going to ask Quaid, I'm going to adjust this. When he can see the main part of this light, the center of it matches the center of this, then it's in a good position to reflect that source back in a more optimal way. So in general, I'm just going to get it in a similar position, almost reflected or symmetrical to that light. And you just tell me when you're looking at it without adjusting your...
It looks like it's about there.
Ooh, my clip's coming off. So from your angle, is the center of that light centered here? Where does it need to go? This way? The other way? This way? This way? Right there. Cool. And then up and down, how's that looking?
Not dead center.
Is it a little high, a little low? It's a little low. So if it's low, then I need to do this way, or is that the wrong way? I need to go this way. No, this way, right? There we go.
Now
Cool. So this is just a Manfrotto flexible arm, and I have a little adapter to go onto this light stand. That's really all you need, and that allows you to really put it into position, which is really cool. So I wish you could see from this angle. I don't have a mobile camera to show you, but he's seeing an image reflection of that light in this silver card, and what's cool about that is you can just use that for reference, take the silver card off, then you can bounce off of white, or you can keep the silver card on and bounce off of silver. There's different reasons why you would do either or, but let me just take another shot. We can see the difference real quick. As is. Okay, so it's not gonna be a massive fill. It's still gonna have a lot of contrast, but you can see, swap back here so you can see better. This was before, with that fill on the left side of his face, and this is with the fill. So pay particular attention to his ear. See how this ear is like completely gone, and this really brings it in. Now, just like the other light, the inverse square law does take effect, less so with gold card, but not entirely because it's not a perfect mirror. But if I wanted it to fill more, I could bring it closer to him. How's that angle looking? Is it still there? Which way do I need to go? That way? Okay, cool. So now it's reflecting from here directly into his face. I don't know if you can still see him through the regular camera view. It's kind of covering him a bit, but I'm going to take another shot just from there. Cool, and we'll notice the fill is even brighter now. So this is really up to taste, like how much fill do you want? Your creative brain is at its full capacity here. You do whatever you want. Let me see, Roger has another question. If someone didn't have the advanced lighting stuff, how can we light conventionally? For example, a standing lamp, homemade. Yes, I'm glad you asked that. I'm gonna get to that at the end, a little bit later, just because I know a lot of people don't have all this, but I will tell you the equipment's not necessary. I know everyone says that, it just does, it makes your life a lot easier is what it does. So I have full control, can do it any time of day, but there are more cost-effective ways that you can do at home. No problem. I'm not gonna go fully in depth on it, but just throw some ideas out there because there's tons of DIY stuff on YouTube you can watch. Yeah, so distance does make a difference. Not as much with the gold or the reflective card because it's got a lot more reflectivity, and the way to think of reflections is it almost acts as a perfect bounce of the light source. So the inverse square law doesn't affect it as much, especially if it's like a perfectly, glossy mirror. It does with this because it's a little rough, but if I were to flip this around and go with white, then we'll notice a difference with the distance. So it should be pretty much in the same spot. Let's do another test exactly where it was. So you're gonna notice the fill isn't as strong. That's because white doesn't reflect quite as strongly as a mirror surface does. It still reflects very similarly, but if I want it to be brighter, I'll need to bring this really close, like uncomfortably close. Just out of frame here. And I'll take another test. Now you see when we take the distance in, it makes a bigger difference than it did with the gold or with the silver card. So it's really up to you. The actual quality of light is going to be a little bit different because a white card is going to bounce the shadows a little more diffused. So it's actually going to fill in the space a little more, whereas the silver card retains the contrast, which is nice, but it brings in fill, but it still has nicer contrast. So I think I personally like the silver, and so that's what I'm going to use. Put it kind of back where it was, and swap back to silver. There we go. So let's do one more test and see how that is. How's the angle on it? Is it? Where does it need to go? This way? The other way? Right there. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and do another test. Awesome. I like that look. That's a little more contrasted. It's still nice and you still get the catch lights. So if I zoom in here, you can see that we've got the main source here on the left side of the eye, and then you can see the catch light, on the right side, my right, his left, and then you can see the fill on his right, my left. So that is basically fill, bounce. I feel like I left some stuff out on that, but really just think of it as a key light, it's reflecting the key light. Think of it as a light source and treat it very similarly. It's kind of the gist. Okay. Sweet. Okay, if you have any other questions, definitely let us know. We're getting close. We're getting close. On the last section here, we're gonna go for the hair light. So right now, this is actually, let me just show you the full picture. This is actually a decent photo. Now there's a problem because his shoulders are blending in with the background, but we're gonna fix that here in a second. But real quick, let me show you what this would look like without the velvet backdrop, just to see. If you didn't have something like this. Paper is common too, but paper is a lot more reflective and it gets splotchy and it's harder to separate in a small space. But let me do another test. All right, there we go. So I would have to do a lot more work in this circumstance because you can see the light reflecting in the, paintings on the back wall and stuff. But what I'm trying to illustrate is that because we have separation, maybe about 4 feet-ish between Quaid and the background is dark. If I was closer with the light and he was closer to the background, it'd be more white. It'd be a similar level in lightness to the subject and it wouldn't be as nice. So just wanted to show you that. There we go. Alrighty. So let me just take one more picture so we can do a before and after easily. There we go. Right on. That's looking pretty good. I'm liking it. Now what I'm going to do is show you the hair light or edge light. So let me switch to full camera view and I'll show you what's up here. So I'm going to turn this light on. Just a bare bulb for now, just so you can see what it's adding to the frame. Test shot again. There we go. It's a little bit bright, but you can see instantly there's a huge difference on the side of Quaid's face here. So if you look before, his jacket, like probably on stream, oops, sorry, I need to switch back to this view so you guys can see. So on his jacket, you can see it's kind of disappearing into the background. Like I'm putting my mouse over the edge and because my screen's calibrated, I can see it, but barely. And if we have the hair light on, the edge light on, now we can see that separation. So the layout is, switch back to this view. The layout is the key light on one side, the fill reflecting on the other, about an arm, little over an arm's length away. And then on the opposite corner behind to, in this case, Quaid's right, camera left, that's where you're going to want the edge light because this is filling in this side pretty well and it's separating it from the background because this has more exposure than this side. So now we're creating that rim, which is bringing out that edge and gives a nice look. So it's a little bright, but this is without any modifiers. This is just a plain bare bulb. So if you look at it right there, that bulb there is just plain old bare bulb, which works, but there's a way we can improve it. So let me go ahead and switch back to this view so you can see befores and afters. This is a soft box, what's called a strip box. It's 1 foot by 4 foot. Again, don't worry about the gear so much as long as you can be kind of ingenuitive and come up with your own solutions with bed sheets and pillows and pillowcases and whatever. There's a lot of stuff you can do with windows, masking them and stuff. It's just this shape that's really helpful with evenly lighting that edge because let me just show you. What a softbox is, a good quality one, is it's filled with silver material on the inside. And so what happens is the light shoots in and bounces and scatters and it comes out on the other side completely homogeneously. Homogeneous means without any variation. So from this corner to this corner, it's completely the same luminance. And that is a key ingredient to this effect. So let me just switch back to this view. I'm gonna put it on the light, and then we can do a before and after. All right, there we go. Easy peasy. And the light was already a little bright, so I think with the softbox on, it should be just about right. So let's do another test shot here. Okay, so what I want you to pay attention to is the difference in the quality of the edge, not the brightness, because that's gonna trick your eye, but the quality of it. So this is the first shot. And it really, again, this is really subjective on what you're trying to accomplish, but in this case, I really like this softer look, but this is the first one. So see how the light spreads across his shoulder? It's a lot more dim down here than it is on the collar and on his temple. But if I go to the strip box, it's a lot more evenly lit. Again, don't let the luminance fool you. What's happening is this is a more smooth light source all the way across, especially you can tell on his shoulder because it's illuminating that height, which is really helpful. And it looks more natural. Now, the intensity that you have this light is really relative. It's up to you. This is pretty good. I think it might be a little too hot, so I'm going to bring it down just a few tenths. So let's see, do another test here. Perfect. And that's looking really good. I like that. It's pretty natural. We could lower it a little more if you don't want it to be so noticeable. I personally like that artistic style, but I do like that. Thanks, Roger. Yeah, I love the edge. Like I'd rather use the 2-light setup to get a great edge light and a great key light, and use fill with something else than I would to use 2 lights for the key and fill. And there's other ways to separate your subject from the background too. Like I could take that light and I could take off the modifier and shine it on the background. Of course, velvet's going to be really hard to overpower, so you'd want something more like paper or black painted wood or MDF board or something like that. And it would reflect better, or even like a dark gray. And then you could illuminate the background, kind of like in my profile picture, it's like a gradient, and that helps separate as well. But if you really want that dark look, an edge light is essential. So that's what we're looking at. I personally think I would maybe drop the exposure in that edge light just a little bit more. So I'm going to try that. How do you bring the light down? What do you mean by that, Roger? Down in what way? Like physically down, or like turning it down? Let me know what you mean, and I will try to address that. Yeah, maybe. In this case, as far as exposure goes, I think I want to bring it down even more. What do you think, Wade? Can you see it? Yeah.
Oh, it looks decent as it is.
Yeah, I like it. I feel like it's presenting itself a little too much, so I might drop it just a little more, because I want this to be a very natural look. So let me bring it down. Is that what I'm saying? Am I saying bring it down? He said brought it down a few tenths. Okay, yeah. So that's just talking about the power of the light. So with lights like this is a pro photo kit. They're kind of on the high end, right up there with Braun Color. They're strobes that are measured in stops and tenths of stops. So my lights go from 0.1 up to 10 power, and if you go from 10 to 9, it takes a stop off, which is half of the power of 10, and so forth. So when I go down a tenth or 2, I'm dropping the exposure just a tiny bit. A full stop would make a big difference. I could actually show you here as an example. So let's take another test real quick. So I brought that down half a stop, I think. So you can see the difference. Let me hop in here. So this is the light power. I think it's at 4 right now, which is halfway up its power range. And if I go back 1, this was a half a stop brighter. If we go back again, that was another half a stop. So that's one stop brighter, and this is one stop darker on the left edge of his face there, if that makes sense. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm not actually physically bringing it down. That's a good point though, is to differentiate, am I bringing it down physically or not, especially with this tiny camera window. Can't really see too well, but that's what I'm talking about. So I like that. That looks pretty natural. So we're gonna go ahead and try to get a few poses, get a shot that Quaid really likes so he could use it if he wants to. Already looking really good. And then we can answer any final questions. I think I might also talk about gelling this light real quick, just to kind of give an example there. But let's go ahead and get a good pose. So what I'll probably have you do is turn your shoulders slightly towards this key light, a little bit less than that. Yeah, and then just look kind of straight to camera. And I'm gonna bring the composition in. Oops, didn't mean to do that twice. Let's go here. Yeah, I like it. So overall, I want to bring my power up on both lights, which I can do from my trigger. Just gonna bring it up a couple stops. And that's just so that I can, you know, have the most control in post-production with expanding the dynamic range here. So let's do the same pose. Cool. All right, let me get on the camera here because the framing was a little off. All right, one more time here. Is that a pose you like? Cool, let's see how that looks. Yeah, I like it. Let's look a little more toward cameras without as much of an angle. Maybe not quite that much, slight bit back. Yeah, that looks good. I like that. Cool, that looks good to me. So I've got a few shots. What I'm gonna do now is show what it's like with a gel on the edge. Now this coat is leather, so it's a little bit more reflective. It's got a specular kind of highlight going on with it. So I'm going to throw a gel on and see if that is better or worse. And we'll get a few shots, see what Quaid thinks. So this gel, just so you know, it's nothing special. It's really cheap. This is just a little orange sock with like elastic on the inside, and it fits perfectly over my lights. So I just open up the softbox, throw it on. I have nicer, fancier like Lee diffusion or Lee filters gels and stuff, but I'm not really too worried about it. So let me throw this on. And I like to gel my edge lights. You can use it for a really nice accent color, creative effect for whatever you're shooting. Obviously, you guys can do whatever the heck you want with your lights and get as creative as you want, but I'm just showing you like a very standard, traditional setup. I lost my law of clips, so I'm just gonna throw it in my pocket. All right, let's do another test shot with that. That looks good, I like that. Nice, it's a good pose. Cool, so now you can see that the left edge has just got a warmth to it, which I personally really like. I don't know, Quaid, what do you think? Do you prefer, for if you were to take this photo home, you prefer that warm edge or the white edge? It's totally up to you. There's warm. There's white. I actually almost kind of like the white more. So, but it's up to you.
Like the pose better.
I like the pose better.
Not the warm, but yes.
For the white. Okay, cool. So I just wanted to show you that that's a very common practice, is to gel an edge light or hair light, but we will take it off in this case. Cool. All right, so while we're finishing up, I'm going to try to get a few poses with Quaid here, just to get something that he really likes, and then we'll do any final questions and wrap up the stream. So let me, whenever you're ready. Okay. Just look at the camera. I kind of like the pose you had done before, where we're a little bit, yeah, that way. That looks really good. That looks nice. Yep. That up there. So the shoulder's a little bit far forward. Let's straighten up a little to camera. Kind of maybe if you throw that hand on your leg more, it'd be a little more natural to pose on top. A little bit farther back, because what's happening is your shoulder's falling. So if you bring your hand up here, there you go, that'll look a little more natural. There you go, perfect. Looks good. Let's maybe tilt the head a little straighter, straight up. Yeah, it looks nice. And then maybe just slightly turn your face to your left. Yeah, just like that. And you can look right at the lens here. Perfect. Let's do a little bit more of a dynamic shot. Quaid's 5, guys, so he doesn't take direction very good. Just kidding. Awesome. There we go. That's the look I was going for. Perfect. Try to do a little bit of jujitsu here. What do you think of that pose? Is that good for you? Do you like that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I like it too. That looks really good. Sweet. So, you and I can hang as long as you want, get more pictures, but I think we're going to try to wrap up the stream. What kind of questions do we have? Digging the brighter one myself, but cool to see the subtle differences. That's fair. That's very fair. Very, very fair. And a lot of this can be tweaked, like you said, Roger, in post. When it comes to actual luminance of certain parts, that's probably one of the easiest things to fix in post, is the actual luminosity of stuff, especially because we're working with raw files. So there's a lot of latitude to push and pull to certain things in, you know, Lightroom and all that sort of stuff. And I did neutralize to color checker, just so you know. This is a neutralized gray card. I did this before the shoot. So I'm gonna do, like I said, probably a post-production of this photo for you guys so you can kind of see the end result. But yeah, if that's everything, I guess, any last words?
Nothing off the top of my head.
Nothing off the top of my head. All right, cool. Well, thank you guys.
Definitely covered everything.
I hope so. How long have we been going? An hour. Perfect. Just about an hour. It's about how I wanted it to be. So, alrighty. Well, I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you guys so much for joining. The 3 of you. Thank you, Roger, for your comments. I really appreciate that, man. It's good to see you. Hope to meet up with you someday and do a portrait for you. That'd be sweet. I hope you guys learned something. Been in the business 35 years and I learned a lot, dude. That's crazy. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I try. So I'm hoping to get better at teaching. I really would love to create a course one day and move to that route. So hopefully I'll get there. But
Teaching is an art, just like photography.
yeah, teaching is an art, just like photography. The reason I'm repeating is because it's hard to pick up voices farther away. But yeah, exactly. So thank you guys again so much. Thank you to Quaid. Give him a big round of applause, even though it's just him and I in this room. Really great to have him out here to help me out. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys hopefully in a stream coming soon. Yeah. All right. Bye.